these were the books that were on my April TBR for the Magical Readathon, with the top 5 plus an ebook being the required reads that I needed to complete the Magical Readathon. Now, oh god, my arm. These were my TBR. Which of these did I finish in April? Oh, that is so bad. I'm sorry, books. Okay, welcome back to my channel. This is gonna be my April wrap-up, and it's gonna be a short one, I'm sorry to say. April did me dirty because I wanted to read so much. My TBR was so big and I had so many hopes and dreams of becoming a Master of Element. That did not happen. Is there summer school in Aurelium? Asking for a friend. I really didn't want to mislead you with my TBR and just saying like, I want to read this, I want to read this, and I'm going to read so much because I have a week off and everything. Yeah, April did me dirty. I did not read a lot. I only read 8 things. 8 things that were not on my TBR. 8 things that had 6 rereads in them. Let me tell you about them. I did manage to finish the requirements for a calling, so wait until the end, then I will tell you which one that is. It's sadly not Master of Elements. I didn't manage to read all the required reads for that. We will talk about that later. But let's talk about the books that I actually did finish. First up, let's talk about stats. So in April I read, like I said, 8 books. 6 of them were rereads. 1 of them was an adult book, 3 were YA, and 4 were middle grade. And rating wise, it was 1 5-star read, 3 4.5-star reads, 1 4-star read, and 3 3-star reads. So not too bad, not too bad. First up, I don't have the physical copy of the book with me anymore because I loaned it from a friend and I gave it back to her. And that was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. And I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. I listened to the audiobook as well, and that was really good as well. So if you have not read this yet, go ahead and do that. It's really good. It is a story of 2 rival writers who are also friends. Friends adjacent, I would say. And we have the perspective of the white author who has published a book but has seen her book kind of flop and has to witness when her best friend gets the biggest book deal and is hyped beyond imagination and is a best-selling author, and it's supposed to be made into a Netflix series. So there is a lot of like jealousy happening and a lot of judgment towards this Asian American author who she's supposed to be friends with, but we're gonna ignore that. And then something happened, and that is that she witnesses her friend dying right in front of her and in the apartment of said friend. And the main character takes the opportunity to steal the unpublished work of her friend. Let's stop calling her friend because she's not really a friend. So of this other author, she steals it, she rewrites it, she makes it her own. That's what she says anyway. And then she publishes it under her own name. But at the same time, she changes her author photo to be a bit more ambiguous about like her race, and she changes her name so that it could be seen as an Asian name. She's not, she's white, and she kind of makes up a lot of excuses why she's doing what she's doing. There's like a lot of pressure from the publishing house, and also like the publishing house isn't all that squeaky clean either. So a lot of different aspects work in making this new book by her a new bestseller, and it goes through the roof. Everybody loves it, everybody wants more, and it's her journey having this success and having to explain why she did what she did, and having like a shitstorm because people of course notice that she's white. And the novel itself has the topic of Chinese immigrants, and so there is a lot of talk about who can write what story, like who has the permission basically to use other people's stories in their fiction. It's really about race and a lot about the publishing industry. I thought it was really well done. I really thought it was well balanced, and seeing how there is that thing in publishing where they basically decide this is going to be bestseller, this is going to be the top priority that we're going to market the hell out of. And of course those will be more public, more people will see it. And of course right now there is of course a lot of attention on POC authors, which is great, which hasn't happened in the past. So it's great that they get the acknowledgement and the chances that white authors have had for a very long time. In that aspect, we can kind of understand some of the standpoints that the main character has, because of course her book isn't as pushed as the other woman's book, because, and that's her point of view, is because she's white and she doesn't have that thing that everybody needs right now in the publishing industry. And I just really enjoyed seeing all the different aspects, and also like what happens if there is a shitstorm, because of course it comes out that she isn't really the author of this, and what happens after that. The ending was a bit much, that's why it's only a 4-star, and also because it was really difficult to read it. It made me uncomfortable. The main character, she is horrible. You don't really want to be in their headspace. Like the main character, awful person. So I hope all of this makes sense. I'm just rambling at this point. I really enjoyed it. I highly recommend you read it if you want to know more about publishing, if you want to know more about racism in the publishing industry, and maybe just basic racism. Really glad that I finally got around to reading it, so really happy for that. After that, my reading went downhill. I didn't really read for a very long time. Let me see how I want to continue, because 4 of the remaining books that I read is part of a series. I'm going to talk about that in a second, but I'm going to talk about the other books first. So the next book that I read was Blood and Honey by Shelby Mahurin. This was a reread for me. I didn't really remember much of this from my first time reading it, and I did want to continue and finish off the series, and I gave this 3 stars. I think it was the same rating as before, and I'm sad to say that I'm not the biggest fan of how this series went on, and also I since then have finished the whole series, and I wasn't the biggest fan of the last book either. So I really enjoyed the first book, and I think I could just see it as like a standalone now. I don't really need to know more of the characters and their story. The first book is just enough. It was really good. I really enjoyed that one. Not so much the sequels. So this series follows a witch and a witch hunter, and through certain circumstances they have to get married without, well, the witch knows that he's a witch hunter, but he doesn't know that he just married a witch, and she has to be very careful with their interactions, of course. But they catch feelings, and that is their story and how it all progresses. There is just a really different vibe to book 2 and 3. There's like a lot of traveling, a lot of unnecessary traveling, and in the end the payout isn't really as well done as I would have wanted it to be. There are a lot of different supernatural beings coming into this in book 2 and book 3. Also, there's like a character death that I hate. And yeah, not really the biggest fan, but I'm glad that I finally continued on with the series in May as well. So I can now say that I finished the series after years of having it on my shelves. And I do want to continue reading from this author, and she has a different series out, but it's also in this universe, so I wanted to continue and finish this one before starting that one. And I think it has vampires in it, if I'm not totally wrong, so I might want to pick that one up just to see where that one goes. But yeah, finally got around to reading this, but it was a reread. After Yellowface, the only other book that I hadn't read before April is this one, and it's The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea by Axie O, and I'm in love with this. I gave it 4.5 stars. It's a new favorite, and I'm really glad that I finally got around to reading it. I think something held me back because it's such a short fantasy novel, and usually I don't really vibe with those, but I really enjoyed it. And I get other people may be wanting more from like the world building and the magic system, but I just took it at face value. I just took it as a kind of retelling, a kind of fairy tale-esque story, and I didn't really need more info like on the background. I just needed to be with these characters throughout the story, and I just flew through it, and I really enjoyed it. Or I swam through it more, because this takes place under the sea, and I think it's based on Asian mythology, and I really enjoyed that part. And with this we have the main character. Her name is, I already forgot, I'm sorry, it's been a while, Mina. And Mina's homeland is wrecked by storms and the weather in general, and in order to appease the sea god they have to sacrifice a young woman to be one of his brides. And every year they give him a bride, and if this bride is his soulmate, the bride that he's waiting for, the curse set on this sea god is broken and everybody is basically having a great life after that. But until then they just keep sacrificing every year one of their young women. And this year it's supposed to be the main character's brother's girlfriend, and she just sees both of them being very hurt by this, and of course being very sad. And so she's, the main character Mina, she sacrifices herself. She jumps instead into the sea, breaking every rule that there is, and coming to this secret city under the ocean. And I really enjoyed how it was portrayed, because it does seem like when they look up they see the sea and they see sea creatures like floating around. And so I wasn't really sure if they were like in water the whole time and it just felt like above ground, or if it was like a bubble and they lived in this other dimension in this bubble and they just have the sea around them. I'm not really sure about that, but I just really enjoyed it, and I liked the main character. She was really fun to like follow and see like the story through her eyes. She isn't really like a pick-me girl. She knows that she wasn't supposed to be there, that she's kind of the consolation prize, and she stumbles into this whole political spiel that is going on down there, because in that moment that the bride comes to this city and is connected to the sleeping sea god, sleeping because he's cursed, in that moment he becomes vulnerable because he becomes mortal. And so there are a lot of different politics going on. Other people are trying to hurt this sleeping god, other people are trying to save him, and in that she just becomes a pawn in everybody's games. It wasn't like the biggest epic fantasy novel, but I didn't really need it. I feel like this cover tells you exactly the vibe and the feeling that you get from reading this, so I'm really happy that I got this special edition from Fairyloot, and it's just beautiful, and I just wanted to read more by this author because it's really cute and I really enjoyed it, and I was blown away that I loved this so much. In April, I also got a really exciting email saying that I'm in the street team for Kika Hatsupulu's newest release, which is coming out at the end of June. And that is a sequel to Threads That Bind, which was released last year. I read it last year, loved it last year, and now I reread it in April. And it just got me out of the slump that I was in, and I enjoyed it just as much as I did reading it the first time. This is a YA story that is set in a drowning dystopian kind of world, and we follow a girl who is a descendant of the Greek gods. She and her sisters are descendants of the fate goddesses, and Io has the power to see threads connecting people with everything that they love, places, objects, other people, and also their life thread. And she has the power to actually cut it, thus cutting their connection to a certain memory or person, but also to their life. So basically killing them, which makes her a very dangerous person in this world. But there are other descendants of gods, so it is kind of a retelling of these gods, but in a very unique setting and space. This whole book had a very film noir vibe for me. I just felt immersed into this world in this very damp atmosphere. I loved the sisters and their interactions and the problems that arise between siblings, and I also really enjoyed the love interest in this one. It is a very slow burn, faded lovers trope. I know not everybody likes those. Usually not a fan, but with this it brought up very interesting topics because Io herself sees the fate thread that connects her to her love interest, but she knows that he's with someone else, and so she doesn't know if she should just cut it and release him from this obligation. She doesn't know if she's catching feelings because of this fate thread or because she really likes him, and she doesn't want to make the decision for him without him knowing. And yeah, I really loved all of this book. The ending is superb and I can't wait to read the next book. I have an ARC, so I'm hoping to get it read in May now and tell you about all of my wrap up for May. So hoping for this. I'm having a read along right now for this book as well. That's going really well. I'm really excited that people are enjoying the book and that this is one that I chose for like my first official read along on my channel. If you haven't heard of this, if you haven't read it yet, go ahead and do that. It's just great. I love it and I will not shut up about it. So those were the 4 books that I read in April. I read 4 more, but those were rereads, and those were the 4 middle grade books, and it's all in the series of Replica. Don't know if you've read these before. There are 24 books in the series. This is Replica by Marilyn Kay, and I read the first 4 of these in April. These are the German editions. I wanted to do something that Gavin from Gavin Reads It All does a lot when he reads a whole series in just 1 month and does a video about it, and I thought sure I can do it. These are like go by quick. They're like 190 pages max, so of course I can just read all of them in April. Gavin, I don't know how you do it. You're amazing. Wow. I read 4 and after that my steam kind of let off and I haven't picked up book 5 in May yet. I do want to continue, and I was thinking, should I tell you about reading them? Should I just be like, oh, it's a series, but I'm not telling you like which series it is? But I thought, who knows if I will ever continue and finish off the series again. I'm gonna talk about the first book quickly and non-spoilery, and then I'm gonna tell you when I'll spoil the ending because of the whole series. So in the first book we follow Amy, and she is just a normal teenager. She just turned 12, I think, and she just notices at some point that she seems to have gotten better at everything. Her eyesight is amazing. She can do sports by just looking at them once and then doing it herself, and she becomes smarter just overnight apparently, and something seems to be off. There are people who seem to be following her and like watching her, so it's kind of creepy in the whole aspect of that. Her mother is very cagey as well. She doesn't really want to answer any questions either about what is happening with her, but also what happened to her, the dad that isn't around anymore. So a lot of things are happening. I really enjoyed it. I was obsessed with these when I was a kid, and I just really wanted to get back into this world and see if it still holds up. And of course, it is a chapter book. It is very quick. It takes a while for it to get going and to get into the story and for things to actually happen. And then it's all resolved like in 1 chapter in the end. And I'm kind of like, I want more. Like, can you just drag it out a bit more? I want to know more. And then you go into the next book and it's kind of rinse and repeat. Now, if you don't want to be spoiled about what is actually happening with Amy, you should skip ahead when I'm not holding these up anymore. So spoiler. In the end, we find out in book 1 that Amy is actually a clone. She's one of 13 clones where they try to gather DNA material from the best of the best and make kind of a superhuman. And the people who worked on this project, which one of them is her mom, as it turns out, they noticed at some point that people had very different agendas than what they seemed to have in the beginning, and that people were trying to create kind of a super race, and they had notorious reasons behind it. So they destroyed the lab, they destroyed everything leading to these girls, these 13 girls, and they made it seem like they had died in a fire. And in reality, they took these girls and gave them up for adoption all around the world. And Amy is one of them, and her mother kept her for herself. Now, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief. I mean, these I think take place in like late 90s, I think. So there aren't the technologies to go and find people. But then again, these were people who had a laboratory full of clones. So the mother just moving to another town and all of a sudden having a kid that looks like the things that they had as clones, and nobody bats an eye. She doesn't even change her name, but then she's all of a sudden like, oh my god, you can't be too exceptional at everything, you can't draw attention to yourself, we don't want people to find you. And it's like, you didn't even change your name, like what? Yeah, so you kind of have to suspend your disbelief in with these ones, but it is a lot of fun. You have like a slow burn romance happening with the best friend's brother, but that takes like a backseat to the action part in this. After the first one, I read 2, 3, and 4, like I said, and with these we have where she finds out more about what is happening to her. In the second book, her mother starts dating, and it's kind of, the guy is kind of sus. In the third one, we actually meet another Amy, where there is supposed to be like a movie taking place at their school, and the main character in that movie is one of the Amys, and it's one of the Amys because all of them are named Amy, or like written differently, Amy or Annie. So again, something where like you put them up for adoption all around the world and nobody thought about like changing the name. That's like the first thing you do. I mean, come on. So yeah, they meet another Amy. That's kind of the whole thing where they're trying to talk to them and find out like if they know that they're a clone or not, and also kind of figuring out that just because they look the same and they have the same DNA, it doesn't mean that they're the same person, that they have the same ideas and ethics and so on. So that was really fun to watch. And then we have the fourth book, where we actually meet like 7 of the Amys, because Amy and her friends, they get to go to New York for a competition, and she actually gets kidnapped by the people behind the whole cloning project, and she meets other Amys. All of a sudden they found a lot of them. Don't ask me how they went from not knowing where one of them was to basically finding 7 or 8. And yeah, she meets them again. We have this situation where she notices differences between them, also like what everybody is feeling towards this project and being a clone, and what they can do with like in the world. I thought that was really interesting to see like how different ways of raising a kid make them feel differently towards this subject. Books 1 and 4 I gave 4.5 stars, and book 2 and 3 I gave 3 stars. For me, some of them just took too long to get started, to get back into the story. There's of course a lot of repetition because these are chapter books. I'm not the target audience anymore for this, but it's great to see that they kind of hold up in the department of how fun it is to read, and like how the writing style actually still holds up. I do at some point want to go back to the series and continue on. I don't own all of them physically. I have like 1 or 2 that I still need to buy digitally. I have read and I remember the last book of the series, like how it all ends. It is wrapped up. I did not enjoy that one, and funnily enough, I have one of the books and it has like ratings, basically if I liked or disliked the books in the series. I didn't look at it right now, but it would be fun to see like in the end if my tastes have changed, if I enjoy one more than I did when I read them as a teenager. But yeah, really happy that I got finally started with this project, and now this really helped me with the magical readathon. Like I said in my TBR, and like I said before, I had hoped to become a master of elements because I have been kind of down that route the last couple of years when I did this readathon. Sadly, there was like 1 or 2 things that I didn't accomplish with these books that would help me with that calling. So I just went back and looked at the prompts and kind of looked where the books that I read would work for, like for what prompts. So we have alchemy, which is to have a book with a circle on the cover, and for that I took yellow face because it had like a permanent sticker on it that was kind of like a circle, so I'll use that for that. After that we had animal studies with the prompt a yellow title, and for that I will use one of the Amy's because it does have a yellow title. Next up we had the color wheel that gave us the color indigo, and for that I used one of the Amy's again. The next prompt that we had was to read a book that you didn't pay for, and for that again one of the Amy's, because the first 10 books I think were gifts that were given to us by our parents. For me, like, and my sisters, we collected them, and only now that I'm trying to collect all of them I got some that I paid for myself. This one is actually a gift. Then you have elemental studies, to read a book that has a source of light on the cover, And for that, I will use The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea. And if you look closely, there are lanterns on here, which is a source of light. We have lore, where we were supposed to read the one page that G gave us, and I did that. So lore, I can put a check mark behind. Then we have restoration, to read a book that can cure a slump. And for that, I read Threads That Bind. And it did really work. Thank God. I think that's it. The other two, I couldn't really find any prompt for them. Blood and Honey and also the last of the Amy books. Because of lore, we have 7 prompts that were fulfilled. And I just went through the different callings and I just picked out the ones that could actually work with these subjects that I finished. And I had 3 that I could have gone for. And the first was herbologist, the second was Eldia excavationist, and the third was a beastmaster. And I looked at it, I looked through like what they actually represented and the kind of people that would go for it. And for my character that I have, beastmaster works the best out of all of these 3. So in August, when the readathon continues, I will continue to become a beastmaster. So it worked out well for me this time. I'm really sorry that I didn't get around to any of the books. I already said in my May TBR that a lot of these books are carried over to the next month, to May, and some of the ones that I showed you before I already finished and I'm really happy about it. So just because I didn't finish them in April doesn't mean that I didn't start them in April. I did start a couple. Like a lot, and I will continue to read them, and of course they're still on my radar, so keep watching my videos in order to find out if I actually finally get around to reading them. But this was my April wrap-up. I hope you liked it. If you did, I would love for you to give me a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to my channel if you haven't already and if you want to see more of me and my content. And until the next time, I hope you have all the great reads. Bye!